This is Hannah from Hall Beer Shop, and you're listening to Daftaboutcraft.
Daftaboutcraft is sponsored by Hall Beer Shop, based in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. You can find a huge selection of craft beers in-store and online at hall-beer.com, where you can also find out about the monthly haul, one of the best deals in craft. A very warm welcome to episode number 17 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Brought to you, as you just heard, in association with our brand new sponsor, Hall Beer. And this is me, Dave D, and the now married
Dave B.
And we'll be here with you, guiding you through all things craft and unravelling the world of the craft beer scene a little bit for you. We've got all our usual features: hype or tripe, brew to me, tried and tested, and a couple of cracking interviews as well.
Yes, we've been busy as ever, despite, as Dave says, I got married, but we've still managed to talk to plenty of people. And this episode, we were joined by the guys at Binny Brew, three chaps, Rich, James and Nick, and they were super enthusiastic and, more importantly, do really, really good beer. And that was a really good interview. And if you haven't had any Binny Brew, I would highly recommend you trying to seek some out, because we were both really impressed with it.
Almost go as far as to say blown away. They were really excellent. We've had some, we found some great breweries on the podcast since we started a year ago, and this is right up there. Binny Brew. Look for the cats. Lots of cats.
Yeah, exactly. And then on a completely different tangent, we spoke to Joe Swatland, who is the brains behind the Battle of the Breweries trading card game, which you might have seen knocking around on Instagram, etc. And if you haven't, have a little look and find out what's going on there. It's a great concept. I've played it. It's quite addictive, and it's so well thought out in terms of nailing the craft beer market and nailing the inner geek and the inner collector in all of us. So really interesting guy, really interesting chat, and I'd recommend having a look for the game if and when you see it.
If there's a bit of geek in you, like us,
yeah,
you'll love this. So it's another action-packed episode, all sorts going on. So stick with us as we kick off now with our very first feature. It's Brew to Me.
Daftaboutcraft.
Every episode, Dave and I sample a beer from a brewery that is new to each of us. And once again, I've ended up in the north of the country, which is where I often seem to end up when I'm doing this section. But it's a little bit different this time, because I've managed to get some brand new beer fresh on keg rather than in can or bottle. It was kindly shipped down from one of our friends. And I'm not going to say, just in case he doesn't therefore want to be fielding orders on it when he doesn't want to do it. But anyway, he very kindly sent me some. I did pay, I'd like to point out. And what I've got is from Flash House Brewing. They are a husband and wife duo based in South Shields. And this is Tiny Dancer, a 5.4% pale ale. And Dave, as we've found, husband and wife duos seem to be the way forward in craft beer.
Absolutely. We seem to be coming across more and more of them. Our sort of first experience of a husband and wife duo were with Copper Beach. Our sponsors, Hall Beer, they are a husband and wife team. Came across another one just recently, local to me, Infinity Brewing. Another husband and wife duo. And it seems to be, if you get on well, it can transfer to the craft beer place as well, and you can make a success of it.
Well, we're two husband and wife duos now, so perhaps if we combine forces, we can take over craft beer.
This could work, couldn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Could be something.
Watch this space. But back to more important matters. Back to this beer. It is, as I say, it's come straight off the keg. It's been chilling in the fridge for a couple of days. I've been eagerly awaiting trying it.
And we should probably say, actually, and the astute amongst you listeners will have noticed this, there's bird song in the background, which can only mean Dave is sitting in the garden. It is about 30 degrees today. It's very, very warm when we're recording this. Dave's got the right idea. He's in the garden. I'm in the loft, absolutely sweltering. I imagine that tastes really good from keg, sitting in the garden.
Exactly. I don't want to sort of be too biased, because but beer can definitely be influenced by your setting. And having a day off, and it's lovely down here in the garden, I thought it'd be silly not to try and take advantage of it. And this is, I wouldn't say it's got many bells and whistles, but it absolutely doesn't need to. On their website, they say it's been described to them as a modern day Northern classic. I don't know if I quite go to that extent. Oh, there's a plane going overhead now, getting the full experience.
Look at this.
It is easy drinking. I wouldn't say there's masses going on the hop profile. I'm guessing in there's going to be some Citra. I suspect it's Mosaic, and there might be a touch of Simcoe. That'd be my guess. I think it's the three musketeers put together, doing their thing, and it's lovely. I've absolutely no complaints with it. I got a litre of it. I suspect that will be gone very quickly. Does exactly what it says on the tin.
I wonder if the Tiny Dancer name is because that's an Elton John song, isn't it? I wonder if it's an Elton John reference.
Perhaps. I wonder if they've got any others if they've continued the theme, actually. They also have Waimea River.
As in Crimea River.
Yeah, heavy nostalgia, and then it's breakfast stout, but it's B/fast. So yeah, there's not masses of detail about themselves on their website. So I'd be happy to try more of their stuff. They've got a tap room, as all good places should, it seems. That could be one to go visit. And really nice beer. It's going to go down a treat, and I'd happily recommend it.
And while I drink mine, you're going to keep going.
Keep drinking mine.
Keep going, yeah. I'd say that the great thing about this feature is that we, by its very nature, we come across these brews we haven't tried before. We have to sort of search breweries out for this very feature, don't we? So it helps us to experience breweries we wouldn't come across otherwise.
And that is actually, I wouldn't say it's getting harder, but it is trickier just because I think because of the nature of how you and I like to get our beer, we don't necessarily want to buy 12 of the same.
No. And
I completely understand when people are starting out, the easiest way is to send out bulks of it, so you're not sort of having people picking and choosing if you haven't got the range and stuff. But it's tricky because those kind of breweries that are out there, we can't necessarily sample as easily.
Well, I've got mine here in front of me, and regular listeners will know I've been all over the world with my brew to me's, and we're going to Lithuania this time for a brewery I can barely even pronounce. It's called Sakiskes, Sakiskes, and I'm sure I pronounced it incorrectly, but that's what it is. And I have got a 3.5%, so not very strong, raspberry goes, which is ideal for a day like today.
So where did you find this one then?
This was actually from Honest Brew, and their delivery turned up about 2 days after I ordered it, so it was pretty swift actually. They have a lot of obscure breweries on there sometimes, Honest Brew.
They do, in fairness. I think it's because they are able to sort of probably bulk buy a bit more than other places and get sort of the weird and the wonderful in, which is fair enough. I just have some issues with Honest Brew, but it's a difference.
Now, I had a look at their website, this brewery with the difficult name to pronounce, and this beer on their website is €2.39.
Imagine getting a goes for £2.40, because I mean the conversion rate's about the same these days.
Yeah, pretty much.
Over here, you'd struggle, wouldn't you?
I think you would. I mean, it's in a bottle. It's 330ml, so it's not a huge quantity. Now, yeah, a lot of raspberry there. I'd expect when I taste this, it's a goes. There'll be a bit of saltiness, a bit of acidity. So let's go.
Looks the colour as well, from what I can see. Yeah, nice red. Thin, I think, but
Yeah,
I guess that's sort of part of the ABV, but you'd expect that as well.
It's not ripping up any trees on the taste spectrum, but I wouldn't expect it to. But those raspberries are there. There's a nice salinity, and it's ideal for a summer's day like this. I think there's no better time of the year for a goes than at the height of summer. I
will bow to your knowledge on that.
Well, they're just so refreshing and fruity and clean. When would be a better time of the year to experience that, No, I like that. Very palatable. If you were measuring it on the price point, €2.40 is an absolute steal, isn't it?
Do they have plenty of others? And an Honest Brew, where you got it from, is there other beers from them on their site at the moment?
I think there was a few on Honest Brew, yeah, but if you go to their own website, 20 plus different beers on there.
Wow. If only EU shipping was as easy as it used to be.
Exactly, yeah. And the most expensive one is about €3. They've got the whole range, from Pilsners to maple stouts. They're all there. Milk stouts, maple stout. Blackcurrant Brute Ale, Russian Imperial Stout. Impressive range of beers, and if they're all as good as that for that sort of price, why not? I'd certainly want to try some more. We've both had quite a good experience there with our brew to me's, both pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I think, as you sort of touched upon, the weather definitely helps. And even if you're sat inside and you have one, I think it does raise your spirits. If you have a nice light beer and the sun's shining outside, it makes you, it does add to the experience, definitely. And I've absolutely no complaints. And as Dave can testify, in the time it's taken to record this little bit, there's not an awful lot of my beer left.
Look at that. What an animal. What an animal.
You're listening to Dave B and Dave D on Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
So if you listen to the last episode of Daft About Craft, you might remember we went to Yorkshire a couple of times. And we're going to Yorkshire again. We're going to West Yorkshire, to Ilkley, and to the people behind Binny Brew. And we are joined by James, Richard and Nick from their brand new brewery. Where were you before this location, and how long had you been operating for at the other place?
Me and James have a real passion for craft beer. Around Ilkley, I've worked in some of the main bars, and I've met James through that, and we both worked in the same place, a little craft beer shop, and we just love it, and we have in-depth, mad conversations about it whenever we meet up. And so over lockdown, after a little time, James has been homebrewing a long time. I piggybacked on the back of that. And we just said, why don't we do something we both love? And obviously, Nick, James's dad, was well into the idea. Why don't we set up a little brewery? It was literally at their house in a little a connected, detached building from the main place, but 2 by 3 meters. We got the biggest kit we could fit in there, only 120 litres. And we just took it from there. And it was surprisingly all right, wasn't it? We got legitimised. We got our AWRS licence. We got our brewer's licence. And we took it from there. The time came where we thought, well, we've established our name. People like our beer. We've got to do something bigger. We've got to go for something. And that's how we've ended up where we're sat right now.
And no regrets at all.
No,
absolutely not. I mean, everybody said we were absolutely crazy. We started this just over a year ago, just as the last lockdown hit. And but as Rich said, everybody just loved the beer. Everybody that tasted James's beer just said, you should sell this. This is fantastic. So we did, and we got some great support from local bars in particular, a couple, Fuggle and Golding, where both James and Rich have worked, and James still does, and Friends of Ham have been really supportive of as well. So and the reception has been, reviews and the feedback has just been, I'll be honest, way beyond what we thought it would be.
No, it has.
We're delighted, to say the least. So.
Given your location, we were just talking about it before we started, in Yorkshire, to get that kind of reaction, that's got to come, that doesn't come easy. You're fighting tooth and nail with a lot of breweries in your local region. So to get that reception and to get those reviews, you have to know you're doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're really lucky to be surrounded by such great breweries. We've got the Ilkley Brewery here. We've got Wharfdale Brewery here. So we're the third Ilkley Brewery. And we've got Leeds on our doorstep, half an hour train ride away, where there are just these phenomenal big powerhouses in the craft scene. And the great thing is we can chat to them, we can talk to them, and hopefully, the ones that we don't know, we just start making that network, because I'm sure you're aware, it's a lovely, happy, friendly network, is craft beer. It's just great to be a part of it and great to have something to say within it. Yeah.
So those big breweries in Leeds, are they kind of an inspiration to you? Is that where you want to go eventually? Or
like North Brew are probably one of my favourite breweries. Love their beer and their brand. And North Bar is, a great bar that kind of started craft beer in the UK. So yeah, we definitely look up to North.
Our motto is never say never. At the moment, we are comfortable, and it's good for us running it as a free. I work a job. James has been working full-time up until very recently. Nick's got other things going on as well in life. So it's good for us on the scale that we're on, but we really don't know where we're going. We are looking to craft a lifestyle, a life out of beer, out of brewing, out of doing the thing we love. And we've just got to ride that boat, ride the chain, and see where that goes for us.
Sort of our guiding principle from the word go is to make sure that we keep production and supply and demand in sync with each other, because the last thing we wanted to do was to love brewing beer, so we brew a warehouse full of it and we've got no demand for it. But equally, we didn't want to create a buzz around, the local Western North Yorkshire area and then not be able to fulfill it and let people down. And so I think probably that's the best thing that's happened, isn't it? That we've been able to keep that in sync, and that's why, as Rich said, we never say never to anything, but we're happy in that way at the moment. So
we've always taken everything a bit cautiously as well, because we've started up during COVID. Like when we started out, we said we're just going to be a keg brewery. And then we launched in October last year. We sold our first batch of beer, and then lockdown 2 hit in November. And we were like, oh, we can't sell kegs anymore. We better get canning. So then we started doing canning beer. And that's definitely something we wouldn't have done. And we're really happy we have.
Have you been able to can yourselves, or have you had to borrow someone else's canning facility? Because I know other places have had to do that.
We can, we seam, we label ourselves all by hand.
Fair play.
Now we're sort of a little bit envious. We're sitting here thinking, yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to do this as well. We'd love to make.
Yeah, when you were talking about living your life and living it through craft beer and everything. I mean, this is our outlet, but we'd love to make it better than that.
Yeah, I think people who love it and can make a living out of it. That's fantastic, isn't it? To make a living out of what you love.
It is. It's exactly what we want to do. And
I said it just the other night to these guys. I said, personally, I spent too long in the corporate world doing a job I didn't really love, wasn't really passionate about. To be at your age and to be able to really do something you love, and it is a dream, and I think it's going to pay dividends in the future.
I left my job. I've been working like 6 years doing web design for marketing agencies, and I'm just sort of 2 weeks, 3 weeks now into not doing that full time. I'm still having to pinch myself a little bit that it kind of gets to being here. I just can't wait to start brewing in here now.
So that's been a great help to the brewery as well, because we haven't had to outsource any web design, web development. Even we talked about doing stuff ourselves. Being a craft brewery, James does a lot of the label design as well. So the oak, the rot, this one. There's a long story behind that, which no, it's not a long story. It's just a fun story.
No.
But James has done the label design for that as well, and we've just got our own labels printed. So it really is, as they say, soup to nuts operation.
Just mentioned there one of the beers you talked about. I've got a couple of different ones. I've got Under the Manhole Cover, which is where it all started. First things first, Binny Brew. What's the name? What's the reasoning behind the name? How did that come about?
Brilliant question, and I'm going to divert that to these two because there's something very true to these two next to me.
Okay, so if we tell you Binny is our family cat, Binny in herself was named after one of our favourite holiday resorts in Menorca, Binny Becker. There were two cats called Binny and Becca. Becca sadly passed away a few years ago, but Binny's still around. And I think, as you've sort of seen, when we started this through lockdown, there were a lot of long sort of nights spent perfecting recipes and doing the R&D. And every minute we were there, we had Binny the cat with us. We said, what are we going to call this? And we thought about, and we said, look, Binny, it sounds great. Binny Brew Co. Mm-hmm. It just had a certain ring to it. So
excellent. And was there similar naming behind Under the Manhole Cover? Where did that come from to start things off?
I think we've got to keep that one a secret. There's a very good reason behind that, but I don't think it's something we should publicly talk about at this point in time. But yeah, no, absolutely. All our names.
I think suffice to say, in our old brewery, there was a manhole cover, and we once looked under it.
Yeah. That's a good explanation. Yeah. I mean, we have a list on our phone. We've got this shared notes list. And we're just forever expanding it with just funny names, just stuff that the three of us come out with. So all our names will have some sort of meaning. They'll all be a reference to something, and it's
And without going into sort of marketing speak, we do like to think that each brand's got each beer has its own personality a little bit, and it's not just another beer from us with slightly different graphics on the label. We sort of almost think of each beer as a brand in its own right.
So how many different beers have you made up until this point?
So we started with Under the Manhole Cover. We then did Chairman Meow. And then we did a collaboration with our local bottle shop, Fuggle and Golding, which is on Leeds Road, that we call All Leeds Road to Fuggle. We then did Mini Binny at the start of the new year. That was like our first beer of 2020, which was like a 2.5% pale ale.
Chairman Meow with half the alcohol.
Yeah, basically. We then did Hope That Rocked, which we've rebrewed since, and then we did Don't Burn Your Dad, which was a 6.5% juicy IPA, which we wanted to send you guys, but we've run out of it.
You missed the one that we're almost most proud of.
And the Kolsch. I forgot about the Kolsch.
I've got the Kolsch.
A lot of people look at it, maybe say, okay, it's great, it's pails and it's Nipas and it's what else you do.
Yep.
We've done a Kolsch, and everybody, I would say this wouldn't have, but everybody's raving about it. So hopefully you'll share you share the view, but it's the real deal, and it's gone down really, really well.
I've always wanted to kind of brew a lager, and I tried a couple times as a home brewer, and they never quite turned out how I wanted. And we tried this Kolsch, and
I think
we just went back to basics, and I
think we should share the story about your mum and dad's ceiling.
So tried to make a lager once at home, and we had an old fridge that was just in the loft doing nothing. So I lagered it in the fridge, in the loft.
In a keg in the fridge.
Yeah, in a fermenter in the fridge. It was a little like 15-litre fermenter. And turns out the valve for it wasn't quite tightened enough, and it was slowly leaking out. And to this day, on my dad's bedroom ceiling, there is a stain that was caused by leaking lager.
I've said I'm never going to paint over.
I'm going to say you should.
One of those defining moments in the business, lager on the ceiling.
Absolutely, never paint over that.
Well, as we're talking, I'm sort of getting through this under the manhole cover, and it's lovely. Classic sort of combination, Citra, Simcoe Mosaic. Something we're always really interested in is sort of the ratios of which hop, or the sort of hop bill basically, and how much you're putting in. But I get the oats on the nose. I really got that, and the sort of nice tropical bit. And then I love the sort of bitterness that you got going through it. It really cuts through it nicely. It just very, very sessionable. It doesn't get sort of sticky, fruity, and you're sort of like, oh, I've had a couple, but now I'm getting a bit full. Like I could go back to this time after time. It's very enjoyable.
I'll let James explain the actual hop bill and the grain bill, but one of the things we all three said is we said, where's all the bitterness and dryness gone in craft beer? Everybody seems to, all gone slightly sweet and slightly not quite syrupy, but just exactly you were describing. We just, if we have a house style flavour, we want everything to be just have that dryness and have that bitterness that you've described. So it's great you picked up on that.
Yeah, which is Citra Simcoe Mosaic. There's about twice as much Citra as there is Simcoe Mosaic. It's mostly bittered with Simcoe. And then there's a fair amount of Citra Simcoe Mosaic all in the whirlpool, but there's always pretty much twice as much Citra as there is Simcoe, because it's just every time I make a beer with Citra, this is always a great beer. And then it's pretty heavily dry hopped. Again, there's twice as much Citra as Simcoe Mosaic, but we dry hop it at about, it's right, it's over 12 grams a litre. So it's fairly hefty for a 4.3% pale.
And that's what a lot of people that try it say. They say, I can't believe this is actually only 4.3, because it's got a real, lots of weight to it, hasn't it?
Absolutely. That could easily be 5, if not nudging 6, and I wouldn't have blinked. Yeah, no, that's really enjoyable. I'm trying to pace myself a bit before I crack on to the next one. So that's a good indicator of how much I'm enjoying it.
So you talked about your Kolsch and your pails. Is there any sort of plans to try some different styles as well?
What he means is, are you going to do a sour? Because whenever he talks like that,
James,
we all love gozes, and we've always been a big fan of the North triple fruited gozes.
Oh, yeah, now you're talking.
So we are planning very soon, hopefully it'll be one of the first beers we do in this brewery, to do a blackcurrant goze.
Nice.
We've been on the verge of making that goze for about 4 months now. And
we said we'll tease it to you. We said before that we've usually got the name before we've got the beer. It's going to be called Eric the Seagull. I'll let you ponder why.
We've even got the label ready to go. So as soon as we're back in and up in production, the gozes is where we're going, and that's going to be part of a trilogy. So we've got Eric the Seagull,
Derek and Merrick.
Eric, Derek and Merrick.
So a blueberry one will be next. And then who knows?
Well, can't wait for those. So what about stouts? Would you venture into stouts as well?
I only really drink, I do like a good stout. I usually only really drink impy stouts, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll do a stout. I think we'll probably wait until it's a bit close to winter. And I've never really kind of tried stout properly before, so it's going to be a bit of a venture into the unknown for us. But we definitely want to do one.
Another of our mottos is we want to brew beer that we like to drink.
This is a recurring theme we get, that brewers like to brew what they like to drink. If you're brewing something that you are passionate about yourself, that's going to come through in the finished product, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
We won't be a hype brewery, a hype beer brewery, will we? We'll brew what we want to brew, and also, commercially, where we know the market is, because we're small, so we don't have a 20, 30 beer range. So we go where we know what we brew, what we know people will buy, as well as what we like. So there is a commercial aspect to that as well.
Are you hoping to get your beers outside of Yorkshire, bring it sort of a bit more nationally and get a sort of bit more exposure? Would that be the aim?
100%. We want people to know about Binny Brew, but whether there'll be an amount that we can create for all those people to have it, that's a question mark, and that's in where we go. But absolutely, we want to spread out. We've got a bit of a following. We've got some really loyal followers here in our hometown. We jumped into a place called Yorkshire Craft Beers that took on a big selection of our cans. And just our social media has gone wild from that. And it's so exciting when we get to see people not here in our hometown trying our beers. I mean, I'm only the helper to James in terms of the brewing. I mean, it must be phenomenal for you to see somebody tasting your recipe, something that you've created.
We got like a 4.5 on Untapped the other day for Kolsch, and I was like, I like this beer, but wow, 4.5. Yeah, it really means the world when people say they love it.
Yeah, if we don't have national distribution in the next 6 to 12 months, we plan to do that. Of course, we'll be disappointed if we're not national with it. Just even when we go to the Fuggle and Go, somebody orders our beer we're sitting at the next table and they order it. Like, wow, this is great. You get a real.
Well, when we went down to Friends of Ham that time, they just put the first ever keg of Don't Burn Your Dad on, which was like our first kind of big IPA.
That's it. And we had a table chanting Binny Brew, and it was just wow. It's like being a rock star, which I think we've all wanted to be at some point. We're never going to do that, but this is our new rock and roll. It's the craft beer. It's brilliant. It's so exciting.
The New England. First thing I'll say is credit to you, James, because I can absolutely taste the difference in what you've done from one to the next. I know you've got different hops going in here. We've got Citra, Mosaic, and the El Dorado. I get the El Dorado quite nicely. And then your Mosaic is doing what Nick mentioned about keeping it dry, keeping it bitter. But the softness compared to the dryness of Under the Manhole cover is night and day. And that's lovely. Like that shows real touch for me.
Yeah, the Chairman Meow was supposed to be a bit more of a classic New England.
It's not super tropical, is it? It's nice. It's fruity without being sickly. Yeah, it's really enjoyable. Well, I think just from what I've had on this very small sample, and I'm really looking forward to the other two I've got, I think you guys have got nothing to worry about in terms of growing, and I think the sky could be the limit. I'm really impressed. And people who do listen to this know of the two of us, I'm way harder to please, but I'm genuinely impressed. I'm not blowing smoke or anything. They're really good beers.
Well done, James.
Really looking forward to seeing what you guys do. So if people want to get hold of your beers or get in touch with you, what are your social details to do so?
We're on all social, just at Binny Brew. I think where's the best place to get hold of our beers at the moment? Because Yorkshire Craft Beers. I think
that's sort of the nationwide.
You're nationwide, yeah.
So Yorkshire Craft Beers have a great web shop and delivered nationally. So it's probably the easiest place.
And there's Curious Hop as well.
Yes.
I think I've national.
Yeah. Curious Hop in Otley. Yeah. Big shout out to Marcus. He's fantastic and has been an incredible support as well for us. Yeah.
This is Daft About Craft.
Right, we're now very happy to announce that our Drink Along With Us feature makes a very welcome return to the podcast. Sponsored now by our brand new sponsor, Hall Beer. We haven't done the Drink Along for a couple of episodes, so we're really, really happy it's back. And we've got 3 beers that hopefully you've seen on our Instagram feed. You've got them from Hall Beer with a nice 15% discount, and now you're ready to drink them with us. And hopefully enjoy them with us as well. 3 great looking beers, Dave.
These guys could have actually featured as a brew for me, and I think they could for you as well, couldn't they? This is Mourne Mountains, class distinction, New England Pale, 4.5%, and Mourne Mountains are based in Northern Ireland.
That's right, in Newry in Northern Ireland, at the base of the Mourne Mountains, I believe. And they've got a water supply that comes down the mountain.
It's very clean.
Well, that's
very clean.
That's what you'd expect, isn't it?
Yeah. Perhaps it's because you just said that to put that in my mind about the water, but it is exceptionally clean. Definitely session strength. It's not abundantly full of flavour in the sense that you can tell it's 4.5. It's not 6. It's not sort of got haze for days and all the big fruity flavours. It is very sessionable though.
But I've noticed a lot recently, we went through a stage of buying a lot of tippers and dippers and even quad IPAs, some of which are a bit iffy. But I look in my fridge and there's a lot of those big beers in the fridge. My point being that it's quite hard to get through them, isn't it, sometimes? Really, a beer like this at 4 or 5%, it's much easier to drink on every day of the week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not an argument. It's a discussion you and I have a few times, isn't it? Because while you want to try the latest 10%, 11% beer that everyone's raving about, if you open it up and you don't love it when you start, you're sort of like, oh, unless it's so bad you want to pour it, you're stuck with a beer which is going to take a long time to drink and you're not massively enjoying it. So I'd much rather have a couple at 6% that are really good than one big one that might be a bit iffy.
Exactly. And if you're not too enamoured with it and it is 10 or 11%, that's all you're going to be having, isn't it, if you slowly work your way through it during the evening. So anyway, this drink-along feature now, well, it used to be quite short and snappy. We're going to change it up a little bit and just talk about things that have been going on in our own lives and the beer scene and all sorts of stuff. So really, we have to start off, Dave, with your wedding. But before the wedding itself, probably your stag.
Yeah, the stag went through various iterations. It could have happened in Belgium, then it was going to happen up north in Liverpool or Manchester, and then eventually it ended up being in my backyard in Ipswich, which regular listeners will know I don't exactly think the Suffolk craft scene is hugely amazing at the moment, but it's got its elements, and we made the most of it with Arcade Tavern. Certainly, they saw I assume we own shares in them now.
I think Arcade Tavern probably saw more of us than they wanted to over that weekend, I'd have thought.
Yeah, we had a great time in there both nights, and the beer was really, really good.
Really excellent.
I mean, it wasn't obviously solely down to us, but I know 2 beers that were on tap ended during our time on Saturday night, which did coincide with England playing. I think we did put a good dent in supplies.
And at the very end of the Saturday night, when we were maybe thinking about wrapping up, you perhaps already had, some Steady Rolling Man came on, so I had to help myself to a couple of pints of that as well. That's about 1 o'clock, I think. Yeah,
I didn't even know there was any Steady Rolling Man. I was on rum at that point.
Do you want to tell people about the wall, Dave? I can't let you get away with this.
I was a maker of my own downfall. Before we went out on the second night of the stag do, we were having a bit of a barbecue around one of my friends. We played a bit of Mr. and Mrs. and
with a difference.
It was slightly doctored, so I was going to lose, which I didn't realise. But also, I foolishly was trying to smash through quite strong craft at that point. I think I was on it was at least a 7% can, and then it got blended with something else, which it didn't need to be. And then I'd also had at least half of 2 dippers and half a tipper at that point as well. And then I got one of the Tartarus beers out, which I really don't remember. Yeah, I split it, but I don't remember drinking it.
That was a 14%er. Very nice. Brilliant. Very good. Brilliant. That was.
I'll take your word for it.
I noticed you didn't check that one in on didn't check that in on tap, Dave.
I could not tell you the first thing about that beer. Sure, but the upshot was that we got the taxi in. I don't remember the taxi ride, although there is some footage of me pinging my face mask into my face repeatedly because I kept forgetting I had it on and I couldn't breathe. And then I had to have a little bit of a time out for an hour with my head against a wall. Well, no illness, I'd like to point out.
Yeah, there was no sickness. It was remarkable.
I just needed some quiet time before I came back in.
It was amazing. He spent about an hour by the healing wall in Ipswich, and when he came back in, there was a massive round of applause, and he walked in like he'd just got out of the shower, perfectly refreshed. He was all systems go again. It was staggering, really.
And then I was there till the death, which is how it should be, I think. So, no, it was a really good weekend. And then obviously, as you say, it precluded us moving on to the wedding itself, which was obviously even better. It was a brilliant day. And a small part of that was made even more brilliant by Dan and Sam from Copper Beach, who we'd talked to, bought some beer off them. We had 2 crates of Birdie, and we also had a crate of what everyone else will know as South Pointing Fish, but as what Katie and I will now forever know as Second Love, which is the same beer, but they very kindly put us in contact with their graphic designer. He redid the labels, put our names on it. There are some shots, and once I've got the professional shots, I'll get them on our Instagram feed so everyone can see them. And the QR code went to our Spotify page. And the beers themselves, which was the thing that really pleased me the most, were an absolute hit. And they were sold out, I think, pretty much by the end of the speeches. Sort of even before the evening started, I don't think there was much about. The stuff just absolutely flew, which was really pleasing.
There was some free ride there as well, wasn't there? I think we mentioned Birdie and South Pointing Fish was free ride as well. And we should say actually that the Second Love was actually delivered by hand by Dan and Sam on the morning of the wedding.
On the morning of, and I apologise. I haven't really said it to Sam, but she sort of turned up and they were a bit looking for someone. They luckily bumped into me, but I wasn't really concentrating at that point because I had sort of slightly bigger things on my mind. So I did sort of go, oh yeah, they'll be fine. Put the beers over there and that'll be all right. And it did work out all right. But ever so grateful for them for doing that, for the hand delivery. I know they then went on and had a lovely camping trip. And I think they went to Ampersand, didn't they?
They did. We went to Duration. They went to Ampersand, yeah.
Yeah, so they did get their craft beer hitting as well. But just further proof, we've championed Copper Beach on this podcast for quite a while now, and we'll keep doing so because when you know something's good, it's so rewarding to see people. And I had quite a few people who might like beer, might not like craft beer, or might like craft beer, but was sort of, who are these guys? But to a man and a woman, everyone absolutely loved the beers, and they really went down an absolute storm. And I'd hope perhaps along the line that'll get them some more business. But yeah, it was brilliant.
Favourite bit of the day, other than the actual getting married?
Well, I was going to say, other than the actual ceremony, that's a really good question. You put me on the spot with it as well. I did hold the Copper Beach stuff quite high. There was a moment in the best man speech which I didn't enjoy at the time, but looking back, I actually did really like. And I think you'll probably know which moment I meant when he said about how like to check people all right. And I do like that as a moment, even though I hated it at the time because everyone was looking at me, and I don't really like that.
No, I thought it was a really lovely touch. It's a nice touch that was.
Yes, but there were so many. I mean, that stands out. But then sort of just catching up with people, the fact it was so normal, credit to our venue, Hot Cold Hall, sort of treated as an outside venue, so everything was in play. The dance floor was on. People could actually go to the bar and get a drink rather than table service, which I know blew quite a few people's minds. And it still feels like a blur. And we've got a videographer, and we'll get the stuff back from them, and then I can actually relive it a bit more because I think there's huge gaps which I don't actually know. So, what about you?
Not alcohol-induced gaps either, but I think when I got married, you forget things because you're sort of whizzing around talking to people all over the place, trying to make sure everybody's okay, and your day can kind of pass you by in a way, can't it? I said to both you and Katie at the time, I'm not a great lover of weddings, but I really enjoyed your wedding, and I'm not just saying that. It was it was tremendous. To meet all the people we did on the stag, they were all massively welcoming. I felt like a bit of a star in Ipswich, actually. It was quite nice.
Well, in fairness, just so we don't big your ego up too much, but obviously you journeyed all the way down from the West Midlands on the first night, and we were due to go out for a curry, and you were running a little bit late. Not really your fault. I think it was just the Friday night traffic. But anyway, you got into Arcade. You'd never been in there. You'd never met 99% of the people in the room, bar me, I think. And we were all getting ready to go, and you got a pint. And then it was sort of, oh, come on, Dave, everyone wants to go. You got to go. And I think someone else was egging you on. And in fairness to you, you chopped your pint very, very quickly and then just set yourself up for the weekend. And you set your stall out, and that was that.
Yeah.
And I don't have you down as a quick drinker. That was the best part.
I just thought, there's a bunch of people here I've never met before. How do you impress them? I know, drink some beer really quickly. And it seemed to work. And
just returning while we're chatting away, I would say this is a good indicator of It could be any beer. That's a fair point, but it's going down very nicely, isn't it?
It is.
More mountains, sorry. It's very sessionable.
It is very clean, very fresh, very easy to drink.
Well, you can't get much better.
And if I was presented this in the pub and said we're leaving in 10 seconds, down that in one, I think I could do that quite easily. Well, I hope you enjoyed that first beer as much as we did. We know a few of you who've bought the Daftaboutcraft packs from hall-beer.com. Anybody else, and those who bought it as well, of course, that we know about, send us your thoughts on Instagram and we can mention you on our next episode.
So the second beer here is Mirage Island. It's by Left Handed Giant, a brewery that, to the best of my knowledge, have not featured so far on the podcast. The main reason we picked this one is Yakima Chief, who are sort of the daddies of producing hops in America. A few years ago, they developed cryo hops, which are prevalent in beers already. You get your cryo hop is essentially a sort of more concentrated version of hops. So you can have cryo citra, cryo sabro, cryo azaka. You can basically have all manner of cryo hops.
So just a more potent version.
Yes. In their own words, we offer an incredibly powerful hop pellet that creates a true pop of aromas in beers. The Cryo Pop original blend delivers massive tropical stone fruit and citrus aromas. So this is what a Cryo Pop hop is, basically. This is what has been used in this beer, but we thought, well, let's see what Cryo Pop is all about, because I haven't had it yet, and I'm pretty sure you haven't either, Dave. Yeah, so it's new for us too.
And have you smelt this beer?
Cool, blimey, no, I hadn't.
That is incredible.
That is actually very intense. It's very concentrate, isn't it? It smells very concentrate fruit juice, but like that's sort of the one you get in the supermarket, which was sort of would send you mental as a child because it was just that sugar based and that sweet. It really smells like that.
Funny enough, I just had a taste and it doesn't taste as pungent as that.
Well, they did say, didn't they, that it creates a pop of aroma.
And it does. Absolutely, it's there.
Oh, I'll tell you what, there is a lovely finish of sort of, I want to say melon, but I think I might be wrong. No, I'm going to stick with melon.
Oh, okay.
That really finishes really nicely on melon. I like that quite a lot.
If you hadn't smelt the beer and you'd just gone straight in and tasted it, you'd have no idea what was going on. That taste is so the smell, is so huge and really in your face.
So I love this as an idea. And in fairness, the nose actually smells quite heavily of melon. Now I've had the taste. We were sort of talking about that sugary fruit, syrupy smell. That's the main thing I pick out. And at least that does translate to the flavour. I'm going to be disappointed if you get these things and it smells like a fruit cocktail. And then you taste it and it's like, well, that could have been any hop combination. It's not. It's no dissimilar to what I've had before. But in this instance, there is a noticeable enough difference, I would say.
I wouldn't want it to taste as full on as it smells, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if it did that, you're in almost milkshake territory, aren't you?
Yeah.
And also, it would be very intense. And, we all love juice, spelt with multiple O's, but there'll be people saying, looks like fruit juice, now it tastes like fruit juice. So why not have fruit juice? Why do you want that instead of a beer?
Yeah, it
does still need to have needs to have that beery character still to it, doesn't it?
And it does. It's there. 6.8% it is. Does it taste 6.8? Nah, probably not quite for me.
Possibly. I'd say if the further we get into this, maybe. I would say, this is just brewed with Cryo Pop as a hop. This doesn't, we can't say it's Citra Cryo Pop or anything. It just says on the can, hops, Cryo Pop. So that could now become a thing. First impressions are quite favourable.
I was thinking we've been doing this now, Dave, for just over a year. We started our podcast journey on the 5th of July 2020.
Which ironically would have not happened, I would imagine, just going back to when we were talking about the wedding, because the wedding was due to be right around that time
last year before COVID took it.
Yes. So
funny how things work out.
Exactly.
For those of you who sort of haven't been here from the very start with us, please go back and download all our early, shockingly bad episodes.
It always disappoints me when people download episode 1 now.
And don't go, and don't go
and
any
then you
further.
sort of think, oh, if you hear that, don't, do go through your next couple because we do get a lot better.
Episode one is our most downloaded episode.
I know, it's the one that neither of us is the proudest of.
Sometimes I think that's good, and it should be because it was the first one. And I think, well, people need to download the next ones as well. If you're listening now, you've stuck with us, which is fantastic. But the podcast, I think, has really evolved over the last year, hasn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it has. I think we had quite a few ideas when we started it, and then they've definitely changed. We had certain things we thought we'd have to be doing every time, and then it's actually turned out and we really didn't. And then other things we sort of stumbled upon, or by happens, like a coincidence, we've found out things and we've met people along the way, and now it's evolved into what it is.
And I think one of the best things for me is some of the people we've met and friends we've made as well along the journey.
Yeah, definitely. It is true what people say about sort of craft beer being a community. And I think when we started, it didn't massively feel like that, but it probably wasn't going to unless we were coming in as people who, were heavily involved in the scene already and maybe new brewers or things like that. And we didn't really, we knew our bottle shops and the owners of those and the odd sort of bar and things like that. But now I think we can both say we've got quite a few new friends that we've made purely through this, which is really enjoyable.
And speaking as two rather previously quite antisocial people, that's an absolute miracle.
But when we get people following on Instagram, I do take the time to sort of reply and try and introduce them to the podcast. And it's never just a bot replying, it is me. Yep. I do it because I like to put a personal touch on it. And that's worked a treat, actually. We've met a lot of people through that, and the latest one of those we met was a gentleman who don't know his name. Well, it might not even be a gentleman, in fairness.
Well, I think his name is Hop Hogan, isn't it?
So we met Hop Hogan, yeah, and Hop Hogan was very complimentary, wasn't he?
He was. We sent him a message to say, "Well, thanks for the follow. Why don't you have a listen to our podcast?" And he did, and then he messaged us back to say that he'd never listened to a beer podcast before, and he really, really enjoyed it. So hopefully he's hooked. Hopefully he's listening now. And Hop Hogan, I hope you're enjoying it. Really good to have you aboard. Funny thing,
if he has some other friends like Brett the Hop Manhart, that's the best I can come up with off the top of my head. Like, please tell them as well.
Funniest thing, I was in our sponsor, Hall. They've not only got a bottle shop, but it's a little tap room as well with 6 lines in it. And I was in there the other night. There was a guy on the next table to me, and I thought, you look vaguely familiar, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't like to ask him. But when I got home, I noticed that somebody had checked in on Instagram that they'd been in Hall, and it was this guy who was sitting next to me, and we follow each other. Such a small world in many ways. But we're getting to know more and more people, and the podcast has helped us to do that, which is fantastic.
I will say with this left-handed giant beer, just to finish off before we move on to an absolute big hitter, and this is really nice. This melon really holds up. I'm actually really enjoying this.
And actually, having said that it doesn't taste quite as intense as it smelled, I might backtrack on that because it is quite intense. The further down you go.
Are you getting melon, or is that just me, or what have you got with it?
I get that bubblegum thing.
Oh, okay. So that sort of bears out then of being a bit sweet. I think it is very fruity, but it is one note fruity for me. I'm not getting loads of different things happening. It is melon, but I don't actually mind that because it's not a flavour you get masses of all the time, so I quite like it.
I'm happy with that. Melon's very good for you. Right, so we've been creeping our way up the pale scale from 4% to 6%. Oh, that's tedious. We're going to double it now to more than double it to 13% with our third and final beer on the Resurgent Drink Along.
It's from Belgian brewery Struisser, and it's called Black Albert, and it is a Belgian Royal Stout from Flanders, and it's 13%. I don't know masses about the brewery, but I thought it was worth doing this kind of thing because Hall also, as well as doing all the sort of cutting-edge craft that's coming out every week, there's a nice selection of sort of your German and your Belgian beers that people might now sort of think of as being quite traditional, but they're actually really not. They're actually really, really good, and they can actually be held up, for me, benchmarks of certain standards, like German wheat beers and Pilsners and a lot of their lager styles are what you're now seeing in craft and UK craft brewers taking on.
We spoke to Twice Brewed a few months ago, and he's taken inspiration from more traditional things like that and put his own twist on what he's doing, and a lot of other brewers are doing that as well.
If you know these ones, or you've had a few of them, you can appreciate what's a really, really good wheat beer and what's a really, really good sort of traditional Belgian triple. You can then start to sort of see, oh, okay, what's a really good tipper? What's a really good Kolsch? What's, what the craft brewery's doing? So with that in mind, we have got a 13% stout, and this will not have any adjuncts. I can pretty much guess in my head how this is going to taste, but it should be very good. And traditionally, and probably sensibly, it should probably have been the only beer we should have had all night, but that's
no. We don't stick to traditions, Dave. We do what we want. I think we're going to enjoy this one.
It's so deep.
That's a big beer, isn't it? That is nice.
It's a very big beer. Even though it's only a 330, you could easily split this three ways, I think, and everyone would be happy.
That's good though, isn't it? There's a lot going on there.
That is really deep, dark, rich.
But like you say, sort of rich in the traditional sense, not rich with lactose and sugar and all the rest of it. That's...
You can almost pick what you want out of it. There's sort of a bit of a smoky quality to it for me. There's a bit of a liveriness as well. It's one step away from sitting in your really nicely upholstered chair in a bar, and it's a bit going back a long time, it'd be a bit smoky in the air, and you'd sit there and you would take 2.5 hours to drink that, and you'd absolutely love it. It's one step away from sort of something over ice, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we won't take 2.5 hours. We'll do it in 5 minutes. That's much more pleasurable. I tell you what, this sort of leaves a bit of a tingle on the back of my tongue. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I haven't got that yet, but I do know what you mean because I think with the Belgian style especially, it's that bit thinner, isn't it? There's not that seeking out of haze, all the triples and the doubles, even though there'll be 8, 9, 10%. You can see through a glass when you have one. And it's that sort of thinness and sort of effervescence. That's what I would say. And I think that's maybe what you've got on your tongue.
I mean, I could quite easily light up a cigar now and...
Yes, it's that kind of vibe, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's decadent. This is one to savour.
This is actually a lovely beer for the end of the evening, isn't it?
Yeah. And as I say, get three of you to share this.
I can imagine sort of sitting around a crackling fire in the depths of winter and maybe a bit of snow and frost outside, really enjoying this.
It is a winter beer, isn't it? We are drinking this in the height of July, and we've just had to sort of come out the other side of a really hot week or so around the country, which doesn't lend itself brilliantly. But
even so, it still is a great beer. I'm really enjoying that. I'll certainly be sleeping well this evening, I think.
Now, while we're enjoying this lovely beer, I do sort of want to slightly bring the mood down, not intentionally, but just it's worth flagging, and probably a lot of you have already seen it as well. But Good Things Brewing, unfortunately, had a horrible accident at their brewing facility, which has meant, unfortunately, fire has gutted their brewery, which was housed in a 17th century barn. So just even taking away the brewery side of things, it was in a building with a lot of history, and unfortunately that's been destroyed. As we talked about earlier with the sense of craft beer community, that's been evident because everyone is rallying around them, and they do have a GoFundMe page, which is already going great guns at the time of recording.
Within 24 hours, they'd reached over a quarter of their £50,000 target, which is just colossal, really. The best part of 400 people had donated to it at that point. And if you've got just a few spare pounds, get onto their GoFundMe and give them a few, because it will really help. You know, this is just devastating. You know, it's not a brewery that we've been to or haven't got a great deal of experience of, but it doesn't matter because we know brewers, we know breweries, and if this happened to one of the operations that we know, it would be devastating for them. You know, it's horrendous. Yeah. We should say actually that their building was struck by lightning, which is
just a freak occurrence, isn't it? Yeah, it's just a horrible accident. Nothing they can do about it, force majeure and all that. But there's no reason why they can't come back stronger. And it does look like, you know, everyone within craft beer is going to make that happen, which is brilliant. But we would urge you to get involved if you can.
Right, so part of the podcast where we look back what we've been drinking over the last few weeks since our last episode and tell you what we've enjoyed the most. And I'm going to kick it off with a bit of Colonel. Now, in their brown bottles, they don't half go underrated sometimes, but Colonel are really, really good, you know. Massively underrated, in fact, in my opinion. And they're London Sour Raspberry. If you see that lurking around anywhere in any fridges, in any bottle shops, get hold of it, because it is an absolute delight. Absolutely packed with raspberries, a big floral hit, goes down really, really well. Get hold of that if you can. And also, I managed to pop in to Duration in Norfolk on my way back from Dave's wedding. And what a pleasure that was. The one that really made me stand up and take notice was their American Pale Ale Turtles All the Way Down, which I'm sure I've had before actually, but I hadn't checked it in. But I had it there at the tap room in Norfolk, and it was tremendous. Lovely, balanced, full, fantastic. About you, Dave, what have you been enjoying?
I got to reconnect with an old favourite in the sense of a brewery that we found at the start of the year, Rivington, who sadly I still can't get very much of it my way, but luckily one of the bottle shops that I do use for orders did have a fair few of them, so made sure to get a few cans in. And the one that really has stood out so far, I've got a few more to drink yet, is the guy was an interior decorator, which is 5.5% pale, but the kicker was it's got Sabro in it, and I did not hate it. Quite the opposite. I actually really liked it. It was Sabro combined with Azaka, and it really, really works. It was just thick, full. The Sabro doesn't go to full coconut to make it OTT. Really well balanced beer, and I just really wish I could get more Rivington on my doorstep.
And if you want to let us know what you've been enjoying drinking, get in touch with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Daftaboutcraft or Daftaboutcraft1. You will find us, let us know. And if you send us a voice note through Instagram, we can play that out on our next episode. Always more than happy to do that. So please do get in touch with us and let us know what you have been drinking.
Next up on the podcast, it's Joe Swatland, and Joe has devised the Battle of the Breweries trading card game, which focuses on craft breweries from all around the world. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Why make a trading card game for craft beer?
The breweries all around the world, there's more and more popping up. I think we've got, about 19,000 craft breweries worldwide at the moment, and they're becoming more and more elaborate with what they're doing. So this kind of stemmed from me living abroad in Australia, New Zealand, especially in those places where it's very craft beer heavy. You don't really find kind of chain like Heineken's and Carlings and all stuff like that. There it's much more kind of craft heavy. And if you go out somewhere, then you're finding craft beer, and then you're sitting down with your mates, you're playing a card game. It's a slightly different feel to it. And I mean, I don't want to say it, but New Zealand was a little bit ahead of us when it came to craft beer. I think we've caught up now happily. With everything that craft breweries are doing, it's like sport in a way. Everybody's kind of got their favourite breweries they like to kind of stick in with, and the breweries are releasing all this new stuff all the time. Branding and all the stuff they're doing is pretty exceptional. So why not turn it into trading cards? Why not let people enjoy it on another level? So we've kind of gone down that route, and at the same time, we want breweries to have another way of advertising and marketing what they're doing, rather than just going down the same route of trying to use magazines or maybe trying to use social media just to put things out there. This way we get it out to thousands of people all over the world. I mean, I used to collect Pokemon cards when I was a kid. I know a lot of people collect.
This is what I was going to ask you. Which cards do you collect when you were a kid that gave you this idea?
I'm like a big kid. Every World Cup and every Euros, I collect the Panini stickers. That's what I do every year. And once in a while I buy the cards, but when I was a kid, it was Pokemon cards. And it's just a really quirky way of doing it, but it's familiar. So, I mean, why not turn it into a card game, and why not let people just enjoy it and get that experience? You can sit in a brewery, you can sit in a pub, and you're just playing a simple card game with your mates, and everybody's playing with the beers they're currently drinking. So
it makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. And the Pokemon reference actually really makes sense. I can't believe I didn't think of it before, because I've got a friend, and the long-running joke with craft beer is, you got to collect them all. Because,
exactly,
and you never will.
Untapped
so this is exactly.
Yeah, so Untapped is the epitome of that, where you've got to list everything you've had. It is that culture.
Yeah,
everything's exciting. Every new beer gets really cool and unique, and you want to stick on Untapped. we're in a bit of a culture where you can't drink the same beer twice because you've got to make sure you've got all of them. And it is literally that, except all we've done is we put it on cards instead.
Speaking of the cards, regardless of the game, I can see why you've done this as well, because I said this and the wife shot me down very quickly. I was like, I could just collect cards on their own. And you could make displays of them and things like that, because the artwork is brilliant. And you've very cleverly done the rare beers as sort of, for those of a certain vintage, you remember shinies for football stickers and things like that. You've made them holographic, and it all just taps into that culture. And it.
Katie doesn't fancy having those framed on the wall then, Dave? Not going for that? No?
Apparently not, but, there's always a man cave or something where I can allow that kind of behaviour, I think.
There is. Like I say, we've been imitating a bit of the sports card world and seeing what they're doing. So the first cards that are released, they're a limited amount of what we're doing. So there are currently 106 breweries in the game, and that will drastically increase once we allow new breweries to enter, because that's been closed off for about 8 months. But each of those breweries has got a set of the 5 cards. So they have a brewery card, 3 beer cards, and a pet and mascot. So they literally provide us with all the information. We then create the cards. We then turn that into a trading card pack. So there are 250 packs per brewery made, and that's what contains their cards. So if you buy one of those packs, you can straight away say, for example, you've currently got the prototype of the game. If you bought Liquid Light joined like 3 days ago, so they're based in Nottingham, if you bought their cards, you can immediately play that within the game. It's us imitating it. So we've got a limited amount of what we've got available. So if you buy one of those 250 packs from a brewery straight away, like say, for example, like On Apollo or Northern Monk or anybody like that, you're now one of only 250 people in the world that will ever have that first edition. So the first ones, you've got a first gen standard card, and then a Citra Black Cryo, which is the rare holographic one. We've also got full art rare holographic card. Those are ultra rare, so they're a bit more harder to find. And we've got rookie cards as well. So any brewery that enters within their first year of trading, they're called a rookie. So those are ultra rare. I think there's one in every 150 packs would be a rookie one. So we've got the rarity down, and hopefully it makes it a bit more exciting. It gives you a reason to kind of collect. And
I love the exclusivity of it all. It really fits in with the craft beer scene, doesn't it?
It's peaking Dave's FOMO. So that's straight away. That's a win. When you first got in touch, I sort of, my initial reaction was I assumed it was going to be a UK thing, but it's really not. There's, of that pack that of the startup that I've got, there were breweries that are completely new to me. Sort of the Finnish one, who have I got here? Blaster Brewery. Never heard of them before. It's brilliant. It's a great way to also sort of find some new ones.
Yeah, even in the UK, like people will be collecting all the cars, and at the same time you'll be finding UK breweries you've never heard of, and those could be breweries just down your road. And there's 28 countries currently represented in the game, which again will increase quite drastically. I think we've got somewhere around 300 breweries on a bit of a waiting list. Altitude Brewing, who are a Kiwi brewery that are inside every one of the boxes. No one will really know who they are. They're a very small brewery, but I knew those when I lived in Queenstown in New Zealand. And they're part of the trigger for why I started doing it, because they wanted me to import their beers over to the UK when I moved back. But it was a tough thing for me to do on my own. So I kind of thought, how do I advertise and how do I market them without using magazines and paying a stupid amount on magazines that everybody flicks through, doesn't read? And then social media, people kind of tend to flick through it a lot and not necessarily spend that much time learning about it. So this was why I kind of came up with that. And that now means that Kiwi brewing company with 2,000 followers on Instagram now has people all over the world, in America, England, everywhere, now collecting their cars and visibly looking at them to try and battle someone or to try and steal someone's beers. Or I mean, I really enjoy it because I get to learn about all these new breweries. I think out of the 15 breweries you get in every single pack, to be honest, about 9 of those I didn't really know of. I just searched through Instagram and found them, and then they sent their images for everything, and like, cool, they're actually quite good. I should probably try and find their beers.
You must be quite a salesman as well to be able to get such worldwide interest. And as you say, with this waiting list, that's impressive.
That's what a few people have said to me, but sales isn't my background. Being a chef was always my background. This is brand new to me, and you don't have to sell it. The fact that they've got breweries and the fact they're creating all these kind of cool can art and like all the quirky different types of beers and stuff, that already is them saying we want to be a part of something quite cool and quite different. So all I do is just send them a couple of images, say, would you like to be involved in this? They're in. It's really not difficult.
So, Dave, you have played the game with your wife.
I have.
How does it work?
So basically, you are tasked with trying to create your dream craft brewery, but the parameters are to get more points. You want to brew 3 beers within the ABV that you're given at the start of the game, because that doesn't change. And also your brewery, that doesn't change. So if you get Neon Raptor and an ABV of between 5 and 8%, ideally you want to find all 3 of Neon Raptor's beers within the game before it ends and get the ABVs as well. And there's extra points if you manage to find Neon Raptor's mascot. Oh, and you do get a little bonus if you're the first to finish as well. And the way you do that is there's a big pile of other cards which are all different actions. They can be brewing a beer, they can be battling each other, they can be stealing a beer from someone else, they can be swapping your mascot. So yeah, that's the aim of the game. So there is quite a lot of strategy, because you might get a brewing a beer card straight away, and if you could brew one of the 3 beers you've got, and while that will get you some points, you might actually want to not do that and wait until you can find the beers which are actually what you really need to get more points.
I've got to say, I'm a bit of an anorak, and I like these sort of anorak-y things, but this sounds amazing. In terms of breweries who we might know that are involved with this, who are we likely to find in there?
Here we go, breweries list. So within each card game, you've got 15 breweries. That's always going to stay the same. And then you can collect all the others outside of that. So I'm going to go through my list, which tells me we've got Bread Brewed, who are Nottingham-based, where we're based. Just a very small kind of uni project almost. Got Full Circle Brewing, Harveston Brewing, based in Scotland. We have Liquid Light, who are based in Nottingham as well. Neon Raptor, also in Nottingham. North Brewing, Northern Monk, Overtone, Siren Craft, Squawk.
Verdant are in there as well, aren't they?
Omnibus, Unity, Verdant, Wander Beyond, Zapato.
Zapato as well.
Perfectly. Brilliant. But yeah, we've got quite a few in there. There's about 23 altogether that are British.
Even a few of the British names you just mentioned, they were new to me. So it's a great way of introducing people to breweries they might not have heard of as well.
We're launching our Kickstarter on the 15th of August. So that's where we're going to try and get the funding to then actually be able to produce the game. And that's also when we reopen 4 new breweries to join us. It is just generically, we want to help and advertise and market as many breweries as we possibly can. So the only thing that qualifies, or you have to qualify as, is you have to be an operational brewery, you have to be licensed, and you have to be selling beers in some way. So people need to be able to buy your beers from somewhere. There's no point in advertising if you're not selling anything. And that's literally the criteria you need to fall under. It doesn't matter where in the world you are. You can be any size. It's just literally just be an operational brewery, and we'll make your cards.
We know a few breweries who are going to be all over that, Dave, don't we?
Yeah, I can see a few. Hopefully a few listen to this, or we'll tell them about it, and then they'll probably get in touch saying, I fancy this. So,
yeah.
So the Kickstarter, tell us a bit more about that.
Nottingham Craft Beer Week have invited us to have a tournament there. So if anybody's in Nottingham on the 15th of August, join us for that, because it's our launch party at the same time. So what we do is we launch onto Kickstarter then. Probably be about 3-4 o'clock, and people can then pre-order the game. So they can be the first people to pre-order it. They can be the first to get the specific packs from the breweries they want to play with. And by about December, those games will then start to arrive at everybody's door, and you can then just kind of continuously buy packs or whatever you want to get. But that's our way of funding what we're doing, because we've got 4 special edition holographic cards that will only be available by people that back on Kickstarter. And we've got things like special 10% discount. So if you are a backer, then any purchases you make in the future, 10% off, and a few other little bits like that. So it's going to be in your benefit to try and get them. There's also 30 ultimate boxes where it's going to include every single one of the cards, every one of the rarities, just the whole lot, plus a few extra little bits and pieces like posters and so on will be kind of exclusive to those 30 people.
Yeah, that's very savvy. I think the merch will do well in it. And if people want to have a look at the merch and obviously have a look at the game, get an idea of what's going on, where's best to have a look now, and how can they sort of follow you on social and everything?
So we do a lot through Instagram. If you go to Battle of the Breweries, you'll find us on Instagram. Battle of the Breweries on Facebook as well. And we'll very soon be giving all the information, all the links that will get you over to the Kickstarter page, so you can follow us and be ready for the 15th. And then you'll get an email to let you know when it's ready.
Daftaboutcraft.
Big thanks to Joe from Battle of the Breweries there. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And the sort of train spotting anorak in me is going absolutely mental right now, I can assure you.
And now it's time for Hype or Tripe.
And if I wasn't excited enough by the cards, I'm really excited now because we've got 2 Vault Cities right in front of us. 2 of their 3rd birthday beers, which we're ready to put under the microscope and tell you whether they're good or bad, whether they're hype or tripe.
This is like a fever dream for you, isn't it?
Oh, this is...
Not only have you had the prospect of a trading card game, you now get to do Vault City in the hype or tripe segment, which
this is magnificent.
I imagine you've been waiting about a year to do.
This is magnificent. This is, colossal. Especially as though you're not quite as nutty about Vault City as I am. But it's the sours that you're not keen on, but we've got a stout here as well, haven't we?
What they've done here, which is the interesting and very strange part in some ways, is they've come up with a recipe based around their ideal birthday cake, which is raspberries, white chocolate, and honeycomb. So they made a big stout, and they're very good at big stouts. I've never had one, but I've seen plenty of reviews, people really loving them, so I'm quite excited about this. But then, to cater for people like yourself, what have they done?
They've made a sour using the same ingredients, and we know how fantastically good they are at sours. I think I've had every sour from Vault City, every beer from Vault City for about the last 18 months. So I'm a big fan. I'll put that out there first, so you know. But the big thing is here, are these 2 great beers, and how do they differ, given that one's a stout and one's a sour using the same ingredients? So hopefully we're going to find all this out. Now, I've taken a lid off the stout, and it smells amazingly good. It smells exactly how you would expect it to. And the bottle itself is a little bit sticky, so I can imagine that the contents are going to be quite sticky. And, well, hopefully not too sweet, though. You've poured yours, Dave. What are you smelling?
I'm assuming the honeycomb, and that is more of a taste than it is a smell. I don't get any of that yet. No. I do get the raspberry.
Yeah.
It varies. Sometimes it's quite a sweet smell of raspberry, and then other times it's that sort of tart early season raspberry. And I think there is a bit of white chocolate sweetness in there as well. But again, that's quite it can be a sickly sweet smell, can't it? But it's not overpowering.
Right. Now, first sip of this, which I've just had, I can instantly see how this can also be a sour.
Yeah, same. Absolutely the same.
I wonder if it would be better as a sour than it is as a stout. My first reaction is that maybe it will be.
So the guess will be here. What they're going to do is they're going to turn up that raspberry, aren't they, in the middle of it, and they're going to make it far tartar because it's sweet at the moment, but it isn't like when you have, say, a raspberry milkshake beer or something where the puree is really concentrated and it's at double strength sweetness. It's not in that, is it?
No.
It really lingers, I'll say that.
It does, doesn't it? This is not a thick beer. It's actually quite thin, isn't it, for its 12%?
Yes, it is actually. The head pulled really nicely quite early on, but it's gone.
That went within a few seconds.
And sort of swilling it in a glass, you can see that it's not really leaving any legs or anything. It's thin.
It's got a very full body in terms of flavour and taste, hasn't it? There's lots going on there. I've had a few sips and I'm trying to work out what's left in my mouth now. That sort of raspberry bitterness is lingering for me.
Right. The thing I will say now is there's no honeycomb. Not that I get.
If somebody said taste this, you wouldn't mention the crunchy bar, would you? I'm not sure that's there.
I don't know if I get masses of white chocolate. I'd almost would assume on their list of how to describe this, it would say something like, we like a death by raspberry gatto with coffee involved or something, because there's that sort of cacao nib bitterness on the back end, which isn't mentioned at all. The
last stouts that Vault City did, one of them was a coconut one, which you could barely pour out of the bottle. You remember all those reviews from that? It was you had to sort of smash it out of the bottle. It was so thick. This is nothing like that. I think there was the coconut one and they did a coffee one at the same time. This is nothing like those. I think when we taste the sour in a few minutes' time, that will really sing. And I'm not quite, this is good, but I'm not quite convinced it really sings for me.
And for you to say that means I feel I can sort of go in a bit two-footed on it. I'm a bit underwhelmed. I kind of wanted it to be like those coconut ones where it was going to be a monster coming out of the glass or the bottle, and it was going to be, you know, so thick you could stand a spoon up in it or something. It's fine, but to me it's a raspberry stout. And in a sense, that's quite nice that you've managed to get a lot of raspberry going on, because that's not the easiest flavour to get plenty of.
No, and there's lots of it there, that is for sure.
There is lots of it, but the other elements for me aren't really coming through.
Should we kick on and open the sour and see how that pairs up?
I reckon so. It makes sense having had the stout.
And I'm quite excited because I've actually got for the sour, for the big one, I've got my Vault City glass, which I've never used before. I've been saving it for something special, and this is it.
No pressure then.
This beer better live up to it. Lots of tart, amped up raspberries. Now, as in all of the Vault City releases, except the session sours, this is in a 375ml bottle. All of Vault City's beers, we should say, if you haven't come across them, are in bottles, which doesn't half make them stand out on the shelves because they're sort of quite funky, aren't they?
They are, and 375 is a much better measure. I know it's a drum we bang a bit in relentlessly at times, but when we're doing these hype or trite beers, 440 cans of 13-14%, I just think it's too much unless you're splitting, which obviously some people do, but I'd love to see a slightly smaller can or a bottle. We talked about Wonder Beyond doing those little small cans before. They were perfect for these kind of strength beers, but anyway, we digress.
Vault City Session Sours are sort of ones that are 4-ish%. They're in 330s. Right. Well, like I say, massive amounts of raspberries there on the nose. Cloudy, pinky colour. And that is super tart, isn't it?
It is initially, but it does mellow off. It mellows off, and I would almost say it mellows off slightly from white chocolate.
Ooh.
I think I get more of that than I did in the stout. I still get no honeycomb.
I'll tell you what, if you sniff the top of the bottle, there may be a little bit of honeycomb lingering around there. I'm getting a tiny bit.
Possibly. The raspberries are dominant, and the colour to the pour is raspberry, isn't it? It's thick, pinky red raspberry.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That sharpness and tartness does subside quite quickly, doesn't it?
For me, the chocolate's slightly coating the roof of my mouth. Ever so, like a thin layer, not caked in it or anything. As much as it pains me, the sour is far better than the stout in these two beers.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really good. This is Hype City, isn't it? This is Hype Central, this one.
Let's not get too...
I think it is.
For you, it is. For you, it is. For me, for a sour, it's very good.
And for sour fans, they'd love this, and even non-sour fans as well would quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think, if you're going to get one of these beers, you've got to do the whole thing and get both of them, haven't you? The stout and the sour, and you've got to have them next to each other.
You do, but at the same time, given how much both cost...
True.
If you had to pick one, the sour is the easy pick.
Yeah, and for me as well.
I think it's like what we said before. The sour drove the idea, and then the stout was, how can we do it? And it just doesn't work. The stout isn't trite, but it's nowhere near hype. The sour is, for you, hype. For me, nearly hype, yeah.
Daftaboutcraft.
You've been listening to Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, sponsored by Hall Beer Shop in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. Check them out at hall-beer.com.